Hey everybody, KC here. So, interesting column by a New York Times writer named Peter Coy the other day about the advantages and sometimes the disadvantages of buying local. And one of the things he wrote, and I thought this was fascinating, this is something I did not know. You can crisscross North Dakota from Fargo to Bismarck to Minnow and never see a Walgreens, a Rite Aid, or a Walmart pharmacy. With narrow exceptions, a 1963 state law prohibits drugstores that are not majority owned by a pharmacist. CVS Health, whose predecessor company was in the state before 1963, is grandfathered in. And now, to people who believe in buy local, this is heaven, Coy writes. North Dakota is the state with the most pharmacies per capita, the largest share of rural census tracts served by a pharmacy, and in its cities, the largest number of competing pharmacies. So it seems to be working. Now, there are conflicting claims, he says, about whether or not the law has actually raised prices or lowered prices. What's not in dispute is that the law has been durable. Lots of challenges to it, but it's never been beaten down, either by legislatures or by referendum. Go figure. North Dakota's slogan should be, as you're driving through, the sign ought to say, North Dakota, where local actually means something. But Coy argues that there's another side to the debate. He writes, the argument against buy local is that there are gains from trade. The theory is that prosperity is greatest when people and countries focus their efforts on what they're best at and buy everything else from other people who also specialize. In other words, nobody can really do everything well. Culture and trade is served when people start to trade. Now, he says there's University of Chicago research that suggests that customers benefit when a national chain in a service industry enters a market that's only to that point been served by small local operators. And now, what about the claim that when national chains come in, they put locals out of business, allowing them to monopolize the market? For the most part, that rarely happens. Again, he quotes the University of Chicago research, which says that McCaffrey's Food Market was the only supermarket in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Wegmans came to town. It's a chain. On the opening day, there's a line of people. They want to go to Wegmans. They wanted to be the first ones to get into the store. But since that time, Whole Foods has opened a store nearby. McCaffrey's is still in business. There was enough room for everybody. Now, this only really works in the long term is if independent operators have the resources to be able to compete, if they can hold their own against national competitors, and that means having a level playing field, which means you have to have robust antitrust enforcement. That doesn't always happen in this country. You have to have an end to tax loopholes that are only going to be beneficial to the bigger companies. You can't have subsidies that only favor big business. We don't live in a marketplace where there's a level playing field. That makes it harder on the independents, not just the size of the competition. And it's an interesting debate, and I would imagine in some ways it'd be a debate that Kroger might use to help to justify its acquisition of Albertsons. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is how do you define competition? Do you define it upstream? Do you define it downstream? Are you talking about a company's ability to compete with other retailers? Are you talking about how the competition affects consumers and prices and access to goods? There's a lot of different things that go into competition. It's not really linear. And at the moment, at least, the FTC seems to be thinking about how are they going to define it. It's going to be fascinating, and we're in for an interesting few months. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.